how you're meant to deal with people or with relationships or situations where the people that you're dealing with are almost incredulously difficult, very, very problematic circumstances where you almost can't find a way to sail through, can't find a way to figure out how do I, circumvent this situation? What do I do? So the Baal Shem Tov is going to show us a very, very key way of rectifying these circumstances and these potential relationships that inevitably exist in life. Everyone has it. Everyone has it. And we make a big mistake of how to engage with it, because the general perception of how to engage with it is to sort of strong-arm the individual, as there's a halachic principle called kol da'alin gavar, strongest man wins, So the louder you scream, the more you persevere, the harsher you are, then the more successful you are in commandeering the circumstance, okay? So what we see is that method is very, very problematic and somewhat superficial in its engagement, in the sense that generally you don't fix issues that way. It's impossible to fix issues, and it often will erupt somewhere else. It won't retain a state of being healed or fixing the situation properly. So let's see what the Baal Shem Tov says, a very, very pure and simple teaching here that gives us a very powerful understanding of how to engage with these circumstances. Shamati b'shem Moiri. I apologize. This is the source that I sent out yesterday. It's on Iron Base now, 72. Shamati b'shem Moiri. I heard in the name of my teacher, which is the Baal Shem Tov, Inyan hischabrus lahaloisai. The concept of combining, the concept of coming together, the concept of connecting with other people and uplifting the situation, okay? Now, what that means, the concept of connecting, means that whatever the circumstance is, okay, if there's an argument, if there's a difference of opinion, if you're trying to reach a resolution or some form of partnership or combination of sorts, we always have the concept of hischabrus la'aloisa, which means how do I come together? A chaver or chibur is a combination, is a connection, okay? How do I create that state of connection? So he writes here the following. Im yesh bo mida echad shaveloi al kol ponim. If you can find one aspect of similarity, one aspect of connectivity, one aspect that is shaveh, that is equal between you, az yuchal lechaveiroi lechabroi ulaloisoi. Then it's possible for you to join. Then it's possible for you to combine. Then it's possible for you to come together as one and uplift. Mitzad, from the concept that we have called the Gezerah Shava. A Gezerah Shava is a principle in which we are able to extrapolate teachings from the Torah. And the way the principle works is if you have a sentence and it has a word in the sentence, you can extrapolate the same concepts or teachings from that sentence to another sentence that contains the same word, which means there's an interconnectivity between the sentences, but by virtue of the fact that there is a similar or the same word in the sentence itself. So what the Baal Shem Tov is saying here, when engaging with other people, Now, this can be on so many different levels. It could be at work. It could be in your family. It could be your children. You know, when we have individuals who are trying to educate people to be better, you know, how are you meant to educate one's kids? How are you meant to educate your own kids? So a person might think that if I set clear boundaries and I have clear direction, then the kids are going to follow it. But we see that's not the case. We see that one of the most fundamental things with any relationship, if you want to see a shift and if you want to create change and positive change, and if you want ever to convince an individual of an opinion or describe to a person a proper understanding of something, one of the most vital elements is to find something called a Gezerah Shava, which means find the commonality, find the connectivity, find one element that binds you together with the other. So an example of that when it comes to education with children, okay? So if you don't have a relationship with the child that you're educating, be it be your child or be it a student, if you don't have a relationship with that child, meaning you don't have a connectivity, you don't see eye to eye, you don't have a respect together, you don't see where they're coming from or what's taking place, then there's no chance for the child to then elevate in terms of an understanding. And I see that with my kids, you know, if I don't have positive engagements with them continuously, in terms of one-on-one, in terms of, you know, playtime, in terms of talking, for them to actually elevate in terms of any understanding is irrational for me to actually expect. So what we see here is whenever a person is engaging with trying to resolve a situation, you know, I had an issue with my landlord, yeah? Simple issue, you know, but it was, you know, blown out of proportion. Now, what the initial engagement can be when a person engages with you with a state of frustration or an egoic expression towards you, some abrasiveness, what the general way of communicating with that person is to fight back, is to give them a perception that you are stronger than them, that you're going to use harsher language than them. But what we're learning from the Baal Shem Tov is no. Find the connection, find the similarity, find where you are one, and then the whole thing is unwound. The whole thing becomes clarified, and that's exactly what I did. You know, instead of responding in an abrasive way, I responded with gratitude, with love, with consideration, with respect, with an understanding of where she was coming from. And immediately, the whole thing changed into a state of blessing and into a state of oneness. And that's what we see here, that you can never create a hischabrus, a unity, a oneness of uplifting, if you don't find the commonality first, if you don't find the place of connection. And that's what he says here. Even if all other elements of the relationship are not in sync, even if all other elements of the relationship could be completely different. You might have a completely different mindset, a completely different state of interest, a completely different circumstance, a completely different perception of anything. But if you find one commonality, one element of connection, then you'll be able to come together through that Gezerah Shava, through that connection. But on the other hand, if you've searched, and if you see that the individual is so abrasive, and if you see that there is no way that the person is interested in a connection, there is no way that you can actually find a commonality, that there is no way that this person is going to come outside of their ego and allow some form of connection in a deeper way, then I want you to know, and this is what the Baal Shem Tov is saying, is you are wasting your time. Do not engage with actually trying to change the mindset of that individual. It's a waste of time. It's impossible to actually affect anything if you don't have that initial state of connection. He says, It's impossible to uplift. It's impossible to elevate. It's impossible to come to that state of deeper connection if a person is unable to find that commonality, that oneness, that point of connection. Okay? So to summarize here, what we've understood is when a person wants to be mischaber, to connect, and his chabrus essentially the form of connection, the form of unifying. I was speaking to a friend of mine, and we were talking about what the purpose of learning is in the Torah. And when a person learns, they often find there's a lot of arguments, okay? But one of the whole tasks of learning is actually not to find the differences, but the role of the Gemara often is to clarify how they could actually be saying the same thing, to find the place of commonality, to find the place of connectivity, to unify what seems to be disparate. And that's our purpose in this world, to take all of the disparity within our relationships, within the circumstances that may present themselves, where it seems like they are totally not aligned, and then to navigate that circumstance by discovering the gezerah shava, the commonality. It could be one word, just one element of the other person, and connecting deeply to that element and saying, that resonates with me, you resonate with that. Now let's work through that point. That's the key to discover the hischabrus and the aloisai to uplift in that relationship, okay? As opposed to just going head to head, as opposed to just strong-arming the individual, to just getting, the upper hand, so to speak. It doesn't work, okay? It doesn't work in any relationship. It's an unhealthy way of engaging, even from a person themselves, because they lose themselves in the process. And this can be applied to anything in life, in terms of our relationship with what seems to be an opposite, okay? But the key is to find that place of connectivity, find the commonality, and then work with that. If you can't find it, don't even start working. If you don't find a connection, that could be as well in yourself. You understand? It could be that you've had a fight with your spouse. It could be that you've had a fight with someone at work. It could be that you've had a fight with whatever it is, with God, And what that is a time for you to recenter. What are you doing to recenter? To wait and allow yourself to rediscover the commonality. Ask yourself, am I ready to engage with this circumstance? Now, the two things you need to be clarifying is, number one, do you feel connected? Do you feel a commonality? Do you see eye to eye? Can you find one word where you're able to connect to that individual, like we talked about the sentences that connect to each other through one word? Can you find one element of connectivity? Yes, everything else is different. Everything else you disagree on. But one thing that draws you in that you connect to, can you find that? If your answer is no, then don't move until you find that. Then if your answer is yes, ask yourself, is the other person able to connect? Or are they just interested in proving their point? Are they just interested in fighting? Are they just interested in getting the upper hand? If the second answer to that, or the second question, is answered to a negative, meaning, no, the other person is just interested in fighting. They don't want to connect. They don't have a commonality that they're looking for. They just want to have their opinion and their viewpoint. Then don't engage. There's no point. You're not going to be able to transform anything in this relationship. And that's what the Baal Shem Tov is teaching us, okay? So we'll give it over to anyone who wants to say something. Any comments?
Yeah, maybe, Rob.
Yeah.
No, this just reminds me of a few years ago when I was in Israel and those crazy drivers. There was a bumper sticker. I can't remember exactly, but it said, "You don't have to be right. You can be smart." And what I'm thinking now is that when you're in that situation, you don't have to be the one who's always right. Because people meet aggression or the level of aggression, and that thing just escalates. So I think if you have let's just call it a maturity, to realize that you don't have to be right in every situation. And as you say, maybe it's an element of humility. And if you have the commonality, great. If not, don't be upset about stopping and just leaving it.
Yeah, and that's, to a certain extent, there's not really a question of right or wrong here. You know, we're trying to understand certain things and reach a common ground. And it's not a question of what's right or what's wrong. It's a question of what should be and how it can be, you know, and if we can find that place of commonality. That's really the question here. So thank you for sharing that, Mark. Anyone else want to share something with us? A question, a statement, an illumination that may have taken place here in their heart or mind or soul even. Yes. Yes, Farrell, hello.
Hi, Rabbi. So I mean, if you have a long-standing relationship with somebody and then you can't find commonality on this point that you're talking about, this point that's aroused, then how do you get past that hurdle?
Well, again, it depends on those initial two questions. Do you see a place of commonality? Do you want to connect? And number two, do they want to connect? Do they have a place of commonality? Do they have something similar in that state as well? If they've closed themselves off, that they're not allowing you to find any commonality, then you're not going to be successful in resolving that, refining a state of partnership or oneness. So you have two options. Either you leave it and you don't engage with it because you're not going to be able to solve it, or you potentially lose that relationship through strong arming the individual to get the way that it needs to happen. And sometimes in life, yes, sometimes circumstances need to be a certain way, and sometimes when something is significantly wrong and it's meant to be a certain way, but that's a decision a person needs to make. But at the end of the day, we're not finding that hischabrus, our initial goal in life, our raison d'etre, so to speak, is to find oneness, to find commonality. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Final questions. Yeah, Farrell,
very good.
Answered your question.
Yeah. Sound very. That's the chavra is the connection.
Yes. These chabrus, chaver, comes from the word friendship. But friendship is the oneness, to reach that state of oneness with another. Yeah. Okay.
I sent you a message about Ramaphosa speaking tonight at 7:30 about religious institutions. It'll be, I think
that's going to be very exciting. God willing, we'll be able to come back to our places of commonality. That's really what it's all about, to come together as one and to be able to join together through that oneness. That's what coming back to, I don't like to look at it as a religious institution. It sounds very clinical, you know what I'm saying? I like to look at it as a family. That's how I like to look at it, as a family, you know? Okay, so any final questions or statements before we go and hear Ramaphosa? We've got a couple of hours to prepare ourselves to hear what he's going to say. All right, guys, it should be with bracha. Hopefully we'll be able to create lots of meaningful connections and states of oneness in all of our relationships, and navigate all of the states of conflict to realize, nah, we're not interested in conflict. We're interested in unity. We're interested in finding the place of commonality. Conflict is boring. Conflict is painful. Conflict is unnecessary. Okay, we have a deeper place of connection, which we are all able and capable to find in our lives. So wishing everyone another bracha of safety, health, and much joy and happiness. All the best, and be well.